A long time ago, religion made a pact with science, with Mr. Descartes, I guess his name was, and where he didn't want to be burnt at the stake, so he agreed with religion that religion would take over the spiritual aspect and questions regarding, God or the higher being, and science would relegate itself to the physical. My question is, when is science going to forget Descartes and start focusing on, what creates evil, for instance, and those things that have been relegated to religion? Why doesn't science now start focusing in that direction so that we can get a clearer picture of things?
Yeah. Well,
Bravo, Carmela. Michael, go ahead.
Of course, I described a little bit about in the last 20 years or so, there's been a concerted effort on the part of neuroscientists to understand what's going on in the brain with things like evil. But this goes back to the 60s with Milgram's shock experiment and Zimbardo's basement prison experiment and so on. These are attempts to get a scientific understanding of why people do bad things, why they do evil things. So I think we're right there with you. These are just harder problems to solve because there's so many more variables and degrees of freedom of the components in the formula because there's people in social interactions. And so, in a way, Deepak, I'm with you on there's more than just the neurons, of course. There's higher order, there's binding, there's emergent self-organized properties of complex systems, and the higher up you go from neurons all the way up to people in an economy or a political system, wow, is that complex. This is a really hard problem. So we need to really apply science, exactly like you suggest.
But on this point of evil, sometimes there's not more than just the neurons, because we know, for instance, that the brains of psychopaths are damaged in ways that we're now increasingly understanding. People are scanning the brains of people who rate very highly on the psychopathy scale. But the classically evil people, the people who don't feel empathy for their victims, who like torturing and killing people. This is something we're increasingly understanding at the level of the brain, and we know the various regions of the frontal lobe that have characteristic pathology in psychopaths, and no doubt at some point we'll understand that in much greater detail. Now, there are many different, that doesn't mean evil is really just this region of the brain damaged. There's much more that can be said about human evil, but it has neural correlates, and if you damage the part of the brain that mediates feelings of empathy, that person won't feel empathy anymore. And that is a causal fact, which we are now in a position to appreciate.
Thank you, Sam. What's your name?
My name is Elliot. I'm from Jamaica. I was sick for 4 years. I could not talk. Just being connected. I've listened to Deepak Chopra CDs my first time meeting him. Magical mind, magical body. And he talk about meditation. If you meditate, it will help you to regain that consciousness. And I did it. These are pictures of when my eyes was closed down. I had to use my hands to open my eyes, and the words would not come out my mouth. And having that experience with the unknown, it's been 2 years now going on since I'm able to talk again and open my eyes without no medication or anything. Just that connection with the unknown.
And so what would you say, how can we frame that as a question?
No, well, what I'm saying is that the unknown that Deepak talked about, it's real. We all experience it, but you have to have that experience for yourself. And to have that experience, letting go of judgments and resentments will get you in a closer connection to having that experience with the unknown.
Thank you.
And a lot of people are not aware of the unknown.
Well said. Thank you. Thank you very much. So Michael and Sam, how do you respond when you hear a testimonial like that?
Well, first let me say I didn't hear it in every detail, but I think I got the sense of it. He was saying he was greatly helped by Deepak's techniques of meditation? Or?
Correct.
Okay. Well,
he was very sick, and that Deepak's meditation helped him.
Well, there's no question that there's if the mind is just what the brain is doing, and again I say if, I mean it's possible that there's more to be said about the mind, but if it is just the brain, what the brain is doing, well then there's no mystery that there's a mind-brain relationship, because it's all the body. So neurophysiology is affecting the functioning of the body on many levels is affecting the immune system. Stress affects the brain. Genes are transcribed in response to stress. I mean, all of this is a system. And some people want to argue that the system is not enough to account for human experience, but the science is very much unwritten and open-ended on that subject, and we simply don't know all the details. But there's no question people have remarkable experiences practicing meditation, changing their moment-to-moment thoughts about themselves. And this, if this is what the brain is doing, and there are many reasons to think that it is what the brain is doing, it of course has changes reflected.
So are you saying it's the unknown? It's not necessarily the divine.
None of that diminishes. I mean, for instance, the placebo effect. We know the placebo effect for many conditions is really robust. I mean, you can give someone a pill that has absolutely no medical potential in it at all, and they will feel much better. And so it's possible to have one's expectation of medicine really transform the way one feels.
And changing biology.
Okay, so yeah, that's a potential of the human mind, and it is a potential of the human brain, and we need to understand that. But none of that requires that we pretend to know things we don't know.
Thank you. What's your question?
My name is Scott. Actually, this is meant to be an extremely respectful follow-up to Elliot. But the question is for Deepak, and that's that how much do you feel, Deepak, that the extremely lucrative nature of spirituality financially arrests our ability to take into account science in terms of the origins of our universe? Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Actually, spirituality is not as lucrative as diabolical science. Diabolical science generates the greatest wealth in the world through the manufacture and trading of weapons of mass destruction. Diabolical science generates research grants that lead to biological warfare, internet hacking, and all the devastation that we are seeing in science. If Sam is a critic of religion, I would say that diabolical science has the capacity to actually destroy the world faster than any religion.
Sam, go ahead.
Because we still have ancient habits, and we have modern capacities.
Sam?
So true lucrative science will be the science that actually helps us heal the world.
Sam, what do you...
Well, again, this is it's a play on words. Whenever you're talking about scientific fundamentalism or diabolical science, we have a problem with technology. Much of our technology can be extremely destructive, and in the wrong hands, and rather often those hands are religious hands. It becomes incredibly dangerous. So we have people with 14th century worldviews who now have access to incredibly destructive technology.
Almost out of time.
But
so I'm gonna do my best.
this is the point to take on board. The remedy, there's such a thing as bad science. There's such a thing as scientific fraud. There's such a thing as incomplete science. The remedy for all of those things is more science and better science and further scientific discussion. It is never religion.
Thank you, Sam.
Hi, I'm Lucinda Yon.
Who are you talking to on that phone?
Oh, nobody. But anyway.
The unknown?
The unknown, absolutely. Actually, I'm a very basic and practical person, so we're going to try to keep this basic and practical. I made the decision one day that I had the power to choose to be a person of compassion and kindness and courage. That was my choice to make. Now, my question to both sides is how do we finally get people there? I really don't care. I want them to finally make that cognitive, meaningful decision that I am responsible to be a compassionate, caring person. It is my choice to make, my responsibility, my obligation to make it and act on it. So I don't care which side gets us there, but my question to each side is, what's your answer to how we get there?
Play moderator and pick somebody to answer that question.
I'll ask.
I guess Deepak's doing it. Go ahead.
I think how you get there is how you got there, by self-reflection and by asking yourself, am I a conditioned response? Am I a bundle of conditioned reflexes and nerves that is being constantly triggered by people and circumstance into predictable outcomes, in which case you would be a machine? Or am I a conscious being that I can actually choose the actions I choose? Do I have free will? And that cannot come about unless you go within.
Michael Shermer, how would you answer that question?
Well, first of all, doing exactly what you just did, that's how you do it. You just stand up and say, let's all do this. I mean, that's how we get things going.